Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come back up this way. I am from South Georgia. For those you don't know, I live in Tifton, Georgia, and have done so since, 24 years now, since I've been married to my wife. I've worked in the school system of Irwin County, which is a neighboring county, for 22 years. During that time, I worked 14 years as a classroom teacher, 8 years in administration, serving as an assistant principal, K-5 curriculum director, hospital homebound system director, homeschool system director, pre-K principal, and middle school, high school, alternative school principal. And if you suffer from insomnia, you can go to my website, and the list keeps going on and on and on. So that's one of the things about me as far as an educator. And I think with this election, if you look at one of the distinguishing differences between myself and my opponent cannot say these things. She has never been an administrator. She has never been a teacher. She's never been in the classroom. And I think that, this is important. This is important because I do not have to hire consultants to tell me about education. I look at things and I understand what policy means because I've experienced it firsthand. Because at 22 years, I worked day in with our parents, our teachers, and our students at the school level. And so I know what has an impact on education. And again, it is the passion that I care about. Is the kids. If you hear me, you will hear me talk about the kids, the students. Because first and foremost, as an educator, if we fail our children, education has failed. That's as simple as I can make it. And that's why I'm running. That's why I'm here, because I'm passionate about our children, our students, and I'm passionate about our country. Because I know both of these things go hand in hand. And as your next state school superintendent, one of the things I look at, and if you look at my platform at my website, woodsforsuper.com, you'll see first and foremost that I am child focused. Because I do believe, and I do know, that we must personalize education and not standardize it. Because children are not the same. They are not manufactured Twinkies that you can put in a nice little plastic bag, and they're perfectly formed. Because when they come to our schools, they come in different ways. Some of our kids are ready to take off and build Saturn V rockets. Some of our kids, you think they've never been out of diapers. And so that is the issues what we deal with. And that is where we have to look at reducing and taking away some of the rigidness that we have allowed to come into education so that we can address those learning needs of our kids. And I think by doing that, I'm looking at doing some things of expanding our graduation and diploma options. During the time of the No Child Left Behind era, the federal government, along with the state of Georgia, said that every child will go to college. Well, I hate to break the news. Not every child is going to college. And not every child that goes to college will finish college. But that being said, we have to have the system and the educational prowess that allow them to make that choice. Because if you look at myself, that when I graduated school, I went to a technical college, or what we used to call back then vocational school. I worked in a peanut mill. I worked in a carpet mill. I worked as a purchasing agent up here in Kennesaw and Newark, New Jersey. But that's what a good education does, and that's what we must have. We must have balance. We must offer our kids opportunity. And that means opportunity to pursue things such as vocational training, job skill training, apprenticeships, not forgetting our math, science, technology, engineering sites, giving our kids an option with probably many of you in here graduated with what we call a classical or a well-balanced general diploma that gives you balance and a full range of options, and also looking at how we address our special needs students, a group of children that are being hit hard because of over-regulation, and again, in a sense, trying to be put in the same box as everyone. And so we've got to look at that. Look at what we're offering our kids, expanding our relationship with business. A lot of times when they see a school come, they want to grab their pocketbook or their wallet because they see us coming just totally to ask for money. But we need to look at them. We can have deep partnerships, and again, looking at some things where we can have labs that offer real life options in business sense at our schools. Giving our kids the practice of putting the math, the science, the reading, into practice. And working with business with that. And we can do some things that are great, across the board. So that's something I hope to expand. But also seeing that the Department of Education is not just a department, by itself. I've already reached out to our Ag Commissioner, Gary Black, and I've asked Gary, I said, Gary, what are some things that we can do to partnership to expand the experience or the educational experience and preparation for our kids? Because you think about it, within Georgia, ag is a $70 billion business. Again, where I'm from, ag is very, very important. And I think looking at what we do with our ag program, we can offer a lot of things, whether it's the metro area or to the rural area. Those are things, hoping, expanding, reaching out to our labor commissioner as well, seeing those partnerships. Because I've seen what isolation does within the school system itself. As a high school social studies teacher, it was always my dream and my desire to work with really a natural counterpart with my English teacher. So that when I was teaching American history, guess what they would be reading about in American Lit? Maybe looking at Washington's, farewell address, looking at the Federalist Papers, doing some things that made natural sense so that we could give our kids, that application with a full experience. But also, if we're going to look at expanding this and personalize our education system, we must allow our teachers to do what they want to do, and that's to close their doors and teach. As I have traveled across this state with over a year now, and almost by the end we finish, it will be 50,000 plus miles on that little red vehicle out there. What I'm hearing across the state is that teachers are saying, Richard, I just want to be allowed to teach again. I want to build a personal relationship with my children so that I can address their learning needs. Says, today I'm just a data collector, I'm a pencil pusher, I am not doing what I need to do. And that's, as your next state school superintendent, is my pledge. We will look and we will address the needs of our teachers. We will end and reduce unnecessary paperwork that does nothing to advance our kids and their education. We will look at protecting and safeguarding our private information, such as you said. Really, the only information that needs to be shared is between a parent and a school, and government needs to stay out of the way. And I hope we can do that in a legal form and express that, because privacy does matter. Also, instead of teaching to the test, let's do something unique and teach to the child. Because I tell you as an educator, if we teach to the child, tests will take care of themselves. It has worked for thousands of years. This is not a new idea. And so let's look at this, because we cannot afford to let the test continue to drive our education system. I've seen it with No Child Left Behind. I've seen it from the federal government. The federal government cannot micromanage government or education from Washington, D.C. I dare say I haven't seen anybody come down and visit all the schools of Georgia. They do not know what we need. And again, even at myself, at the State Department, I'm not here to tell you how to run your school system, but I'm here to help. And I'm here to help because I know that I cannot tell you what your needs are. You know that they're different. Because I can guarantee you, in traveling the state, the issues that up here in Cherokee County, the metro area, are largely different. And again, if you look at some within your larger counties, even within your own school systems, your school needs are different. You have some areas that have a high English language learner thing, and I would tell you that probably the needs of those kids are going to need to learn how to speak English and operate so they can function in our society. And again, so we have to have that flexibility to address the needs of our kids and allow our teachers to take and move forward with that. And so that's one of the commitments. One of the things, the only thing my wife asked me, she just retired this year for 30 years within the Tiff County system. When I became an administrator, she said, Richard, this is the only thing I ask. And it's the only thing she has ever asked. She said, Richard, never forget what it's like to be a classroom teacher. And that's what I did as an administrator. And as your next state school superintendent, I will not forget what it's like to do that. Because the third leg of this is that we have to focus on the classroom. Because that's where our kids learn, that's where our teachers teach, that's where education takes place. And that's where policy and every decision we make needs to focus around those three legs of the stool, because that will have a positive impact on education. Now with the classroom, I'm a foundationist and somebody who came from the high school level, worked down in the elementary school level. I can tell you foundations matter. You think about, even with architectural senses, what I like to use. Do you want a Leaning Tower of Pisa type education center? Okay, that it's a wonderful little tourist attraction, but it did nothing. Okay, it was really a waste of money. But I aspire to have the Empire State Building, type education system where the sky is the limit. But we have to have that deep foundation so that we can build upon that, so that each child can reach their potential. Now, in doing that, that means that reading, writing, and math will be the foundational skills that I focus on. By third grade, we know this from educational research, that our children have to be on grade level of reading. And part of my platform is, and one of my personal goals is to make Georgia the #1 literate state in our nation. Because if we can open up the doors of literacy, we will open up the doors of opportunity that our kids have not seen. I grew up in a military family. I went from East Coast to West Coast. But my mother always made sure that I was reading, that I was increasing my vocabulary so that I could succeed with my peers wherever I was. Today, I still have my, entire collection of Dr. Seuss books that she, gave me as a child. So, in fact, the other day I was at a school in South Georgia reading One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish, okay? So, those are things that we look at and why literacy is important. Because you think about it, I don't care what test you take in school, math, science, physical science, PE, home economics. Guess what? There's one common denominator. You have to do what? Read, okay? And you think about when you go to a business and you're looking at technical manuals. Guess what you have to do? You have to read. And so reading is important, and that's something that we're looking at. Across the state, there's one thing I've heard, whether you're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever. We have issues with math in our state. Math is something that we're going to have to deal with. Again, with our math, we've looked at within the past 10 years, I think we've went through different sets of math standards. And I can tell you, with looking at some of the math and hearing the math and hearing our parents, they can't help our kids out. We cannot afford to disconnect our parents from their children. We have to have that. And so we've got to go back to adding a little bit of common sense to this. And with the foundation, again, for a history teacher, that means that, teaching American history is important. And teaching, the truth about American history. It's not being apologetic, it's not, but teaching the facts. Because we have nothing to be ashamed of as Americans. And we have to make sure that we know where we came from so that we are knowing where we are going to go and where we are. And that means doing some things, working across the state and teaching our Constitution. One of the things and personal goals that has begun throughout the state, and what I hope to bring this office is that one day we will make sure that each and every fifth grader in the state of Georgia has a pocket copy of the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. That will be something we will look at and do, because those documents are important. Teaching our kids about the Federalist Papers, teaching them about the Gettysburg Address, Washington's Farewell Address. Those are important things that our kids need to know. But also giving them a strong personal finance class. They have to know how to work and survive in a capitalistic society, how to invest, how to to handle money. Because I dare say, looking at the way the federal government is going, Social Security is something that will be a pipe dream for most of them. And again, it may be a pipe dream for us. But I think about this as far as the impact on education. You look within one topic, we talk about divorce. And you look at what is the number one leading factor in divorce. And that deals with money and finance. And if we can make sure that we have a stable, our children have a stable knowledge with that, hopefully we can save, some of our families. And I can tell you as an educator, having the family together makes education a whole lot easier at the school level. It means things that we do not have to deal with and where we can just concentrate on educating. And the last couple of things we'll talk about real quickly as a business person, looking at this, one of my first orders of business will be to have an audit of the Department of Education. We will look at auditing them from a personnel standpoint, a regulatory standpoint, and also a fiscal standpoint to make sure that we are doing what we need to do. One of the things I found out with government is it likes to self-perpetuate itself and grow. Well, I'm a good old country boy, and that means that sometimes you have to get in the barn and you have to clean it out. And that's probably why I go around the state wearing my boots, because it's time to clean out the barn. And so we will do that. Looking at unfunded mandates as well. One of the things I found out, and one of the things that aggravates me about government, that if the federal government or the state government, if they can't afford it, we don't need it. Do not pass the buck down here at the local level, because we cannot afford it. Again, within my school system and within my county, we just got hit with a $3 million increase of our school tax. And then for those that were within the city of Tifton, they just got hit with a 44% tax on top of that. So you think about that as a low income or a fixed income. That's going to hurt. And so you've got to look at some things where government's got to do it smarter, it's got to do it better. And I'm not here to ask for more money for education, but let's just do be a better use and a better steward of what we have. We might find out that we're wasting a lot of money, which government tends to do. And then with this, having a purchasing consortium on a voluntary basis. Because what I find out here is that with the purchasing consortium, if you're up here in Cherokee and you want to buy 10 buses, well, why don't we go to Bluebird and say the state of Georgia is buying 10,000 buses? I bet I can get a good deal, okay? You think about paper products as well. We buy a lot of toilet paper at schools, believe me, because there are a lot of little honeys that need to be wiped during the day, okay? All right, so you can do things that are smart. And the last issue I have, and this is something that I've spoken on since 2010 when I ran, we have to look at something common sense over common core. I can tell you, the federal government does not know how to run education. Since Jimmy Carter, created the Federal Department of Education during his time frame, I asked two people, I've challenged people, tell me what one good thing has come out of the Federal Department of Education. First of all, we look at our constitutional rights. We've talked about rights today. Well, I know Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Education is not an enumerated power, and that means it is given directly back to the people in the states. If you look at Article 8 of Georgia Constitution, what it clearly says is that education belongs in the hands of the local citizenry, in the local school boards. And so that's where we need to focus on that. And again, another little novel idea, why don't we just start following the Constitution? It's not there as a rule of suggestion. Washington, D.C., that's what it looks like. It looks, they treat the Constitution, as a buffet where you can just go down the line and pick and choose what you want. But we have to be able to make the stand and follow the rule of law. And also with this, we look at the standards themselves, the Common Core standards. I think looking at the name itself, I do not want Georgia to be common. I want us to be exceptional. I want us to be great. I want us to, as a coach, I never aspired to be like everyone else. I wanted to be the one that was on the top and let people chase me. And I can tell you with these standards themselves, we can do better. We should have done better. And there were a lot of the better standards that were out there that we could have worked with our fellow states. I think the way that our founding fathers wanted us to do, instead of going through the heavy-handedness of the federal government of offering us a lot of money here with strings attached. Because I look at one of the things I look at the Bible, and it clearly says that the borrower will be slave to the lender. Well, it's no different with the government. Okay, you start taking money, you're going to be a slave to Washington, D.C. And so we must fight for rights. We must stand up. And again, that is what I hope to be as your next state school superintendent. Now, can I do this by myself? No, I cannot. I'm honest with people. I have no power. I'm not the genie out of the bottle. I cannot come up there and wiggle my nose and everything is just the way that I say. It will take time and it will take your help. And so that's what I'm here today as well, that I am asking for your help. Because when I need your assistance, I want to call. But I also want to make sure that that pipeline goes both ways, that I'm listening to you, to hear with you. Because as the state school superintendent, one of my biggest roles is that I am your advocate. I am your voice up there in Atlanta. And so that is why I'm here. And I know what the people of Georgia have been saying, because I've traveled everywhere there is to travel. I've been to meetings where I've been met with 3 people, and I've been one of the 3. Okay? So that is just what we're out. And that is what I'm telling my people, my staff, that as your next state school superintendent, I will not lock myself up in that top tower, but I will be out here and I will be visiting you. I will be having town hall meetings. I will be listening, and it will not be pre-programmed or predetermined. But I want to make sure that we continue so that we can grow together, so that our Georgia education will be Georgia owned and Georgia grown, because Georgia knows what is best for itself. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time today, and I'll field what questions we have. Okay? Thank you.
Real quick one. What do you think about allowing citizens or business owners to teach in our local schools without a teaching degree?
I think you have to look at it as far as a one-to-one basis to see what you're teaching, the curriculum. I think it would be great to have a great resource that's there because they do bring skills. And if it's, and I would say maybe it's
like an IT class.
Yeah, an IT class, yeah. And I think that as long as the standards, and again, once you have that looked at to make sure that it is what it is that they have there, I don't have an issue with that because business is a great resource. But it does offer flexibility. And it would be such as in South Georgia, and I'll give just a quick caveat to that, with virtual technology. Why not have these individuals, who can teach, and we have the virtual technology, and they can offer that to a lot of kids. So yeah. I think, we look at it, but it's definitely not a choice, and would be great. Over here, and we'll go here. Yes, sir. All right.
Well, Richard, what a breath of fresh air. As a retired financial planner, I used to give financial clinics to the kids in my subdivision simply because it wasn't given in a school. So I'm delighted to hear you say that. And at age 6, I started my kids off, and at age 6, they knew the first thing they did was to pay themselves first. Mm-hmm. By the way, I have a sign-up sheet back here. Anyone want to put out signs for Richard? See me after the meeting.
Okay. And again, I'll just share with you. I was at a school the other day with a 7th grader, and they did basically, I think we were talking about minimum wage, and they were trying to make a living on that. And I think the kid was asking, well, what have you learned with living off minimum wage? He says, well, I need a second job. Yes.
Mr. Woods, I've got probably an uncommon question
Okay.
for the topic.
Sure.
How do you feel about discipline in schools these days? Because it's become an increasing subject. My mom's a teacher. I've got aunts and teachers. I hear about it all the time about the fact that, frankly, schools are more worried about getting sued than they are about teaching these days. And I know that when I was 7, 8 years old, first day of school, my dad would walk me in and say, "You're allowed to speak them, and you call me, and I'll speak them when I get home myself."
Yeah.
So, that's what a lot of us probably grew up under, and it seems like, not necessarily to say that every kid needs to ride, but how the discipline subject in school, how can that be handled better?
Well, I think, on a personal note with my parent, I received military justice when I went home, so, and I can guarantee you military justice was not pretty, okay, with that. But I think that is one of the things we're looking at. We, unfortunately, I think it's reflected in society of the political correctness that is out there. You have to be able to have, and this is something we know as education and education of that, you have to have a safe environment that allows people to teach in an orderly or safe and orderly environment. And discipline is important, because if you have discipline issues in your classroom, the teacher loses that, you're going to find you're spending more time with that instead of focusing on education. And I think that one of the things we find out is that with local schools, of course, a lot of this is more of a local issue, but you have to have the backbone to stand up and say that, we're going to follow, we have standards. We have standards that are in effect for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like when you come in, that's the same for all of us. And I think that if we follow those standards, we're okay. To me, that one of the things, again, this is more something out of my realm, but we might, as a state, may have to look at something like tort reform, because to deal with these issues as far as this, being afraid to come up and be sued all the time. That may be an option that we do have to look at. But you have to look at it, from a I think an individual basis as far as what you're looking at as far as discipline itself. I've paddled students before, and so that's, but it's not abuse.
Yeah.
Now there's a difference when you look at that. Abuse. I've seen abuse, okay, and what we did or what I did was not abuse. But we know also that when I've dealt with kids, that sometimes the paddling did not work with kids. Right. There were some kids, I don't care. You could get the biggest stick in the world and you could beat them, and they just look at you and say, "Is that all you got?" Okay? So I think you have to look at it, but you do have to have a system of order. Because you look at it, and I've been to different states and I've been to different countries that do that, and we just have to put some common sense back into it. And so let's have a set of standards, let's follow it, let your locals, do that. But I think we can maybe support that up at the state level as well. Yeah, we'll be here and then here and here, okay?
I wish my wife was here this morning. She retired 8 years ago after 31 years in special education.
Mm-hmm.
And her biggest problem through all those years was a lack of true curriculum. And I'm hoping that that's something, and I know that's something she'd be most interested in and trying to correct, because there were common goals within IEPs and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But her curriculum was her curriculum.
Yeah.
With help of compatriots within the division. And, she always says, there's no reason why we can't come up with a written curriculum, even in book form, that the kids can put their hands on, feel at home, take possession of, et cetera, and it gives the family, who has nothing to do, from her perspective, other than trying to hand-to-hand stay on, like in IEP meetings, et cetera, and try to get the maximum when there's no clear definition. Is that something that you've got any opinion on as to curriculum, say, within special education?
Well, in the curriculum stuff you're looking at, that is handled at the local level. It should be. And really our resources, the teachers of Georgia are really one of the best resources we have. Unfortunately, it's probably one of the least used resources that we have. And if we would just allow them to address the needs and come up with that, and again, with special needs, you're looking that where I see that probably with conjunction with talking with our parents, talking with our teachers, letting the IEP basically drive the education, not the test, not anything else that could be convolute the area. but just talking and going across the board with that. So it is something we can look at that, and that's giving the flexibility, but also letting teachers have that be that primary resource. And go over here. Yes, ma'am.
What are your thoughts and feelings about homeschoolers in the state?
Okay. Well, I worked with homeschool. I was the assistant director with that. I support homeschool. I think it's the greatest venue of choice that we have. I've actually taught homeschool, did classes for that. So, my thing is that, to make sure that the state government and the federal government do not have their hands in that. I really think that they should keep their autonomy with that. Okay? Again, in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I think we all know that we need to have a desire to do something. And I'm wondering how we can possibly increase the desire of wanting to learn in our students. Because if they don't want to learn, they won't absorb any education that we offer. And on top of that, it's just, they go to school for extracurricular activities, they go to school to get away with parents. And how do we increase that desire in these kids so that they will benefit from education?
Okay. Well, I think you have to show relevance. I think any time that we can sit there, because you're here today because you see relevance. You're engaged with that. And I think that moving away from the one-size-fits-all type mentality that we have had in education will do that. And we are seeing that across the state. We are seeing, the offerings of courses that, that typically used to disappear or have disappeared. With maybe welding and things of this nature. I had somebody the other day, a welding teacher, said, Richard, I have a student now that graduated last year. He's making more money than me today. That's pretty good relevance. And so I think you're expanding your course offerings across the state, using virtual technology, using the technology itself, or using what the kids are familiar with. They're very good with technology. And that means that we as teachers, and educators, we have to stay up with that. Typically what I found out is that we tend to kind of lag behind and we're playing catch up. But, why not use the kids as a resource? One of the things that I did is that, some of the kids, we had projects and they said, oh, Coach Woods, guess what? This does that. I said, well, great, you taught me something. And so that was something where you collaborate. But also I think what it means with our kids is that we can't forget that they're part of the communication process. That means you sit down and talk with them. Because the other day I was sitting down and talking with kids and giving them, my spiel. And I said, well, what's important to you? And they said, well, Richard, said Mr. Woods said, we'd just like to have a little more, time to spend with our friends. I said, we'd like better food in school. All right? I said, I know somebody in Washington you should talk to, okay? Yeah, when I heard the word vegetarian brownie, that just did not seem like anything that I wanted, okay? Back there, yes, sir.
Mr. Woods, I'm very thankful that a couple of months ago I spoke with you on the phone there at Eubanks, and you were very helpful, friendly, a good Christian sense. Thank you for taking my call. And as you remember, we discussed 50% of the BOE employees that are non-certified, and there were plans next year to do away with their health insurance. The little people, I like
Yes.
to call them.
Yes.
It's funny they call them non-certified, but our county superintendent isn't qualified to drive a bus. But he's certified and she isn't.
Yeah.
We need your help if we don't hold up the benefits of the entire team. We're going to lose what you've helped build all these years.
Yes, sir.
What's your feelings?
I again, working especially at the elementary school level, I've served on the food line. I've driven buses on bus routes. I've cleaned up many unique things in the school. And so I know what these people go through. And I know that really, for the most part, what you're looking at, they did not get in it for education. But most of the people you're talking about are just for basic insurance for their family. And so these people are critical, to the operation of school. I guarantee you cannot function without them. And they are, again, as I said, an essential part of the team. They are not the quarterbacks that you see as the darlings. But I dare say that the quarterback needs a center, he needs a guard, he needs a tackle to be up there in front, because it makes their job a whole lot easier so they can shine. So that will be something we will look at. We will look at and protect and make sure that those people are treated as equal members of the educational team and support them. Thank you.
Charter schools are a big issue in the state. What's your opinion on that?
The charter schools, we have, the charter school amendment. They are, with our public schools. And I think that with charter schools that I like the concept. I think many of the things we used to do in education were very charter-like before No Child Left Behind. And I support that. I think that with the charter schools themselves, it's you at the local level deciding what you need. And so you need to do that. And then because they are schools, then they are going to have the support of my office, because one of my duties is to make sure that we support, as a constitutional officer, our schools. And so whether it's the traditional schools or charter schools, we have to make sure they're fully funded and they are treated as equals. Okay?
I've actually got a question for you,
Sure.
Richard. One of the things we seem to hear a lot about, especially from the Democrats, is that education problems seem to be not so much always caused by money, but they seem to think that money is a solution a lot of the time. What is your thoughts on, the budget, or the educational budget is, I believe, 58% of the Georgia budget, roughly, give or take. And I know here in Cherokee we've got, I believe it's 500 million, roughly. Do you think it's a problem that we need more money, or is it how the money is used?
I would say how the money is used. I think that's why I called for an audit. I mean, we roughly in the state of Georgia, I think my figure would show 54% of the budget. And I said, well, how much more of the budget do you need? I mean, that's quite a bit. And and I use this from the sense of where I had a special ed teacher came to me and said, Richard, my supervisor said I had $10,000 to spend. And she told the supervisor, well, I don't need anything. She said, I don't care. You have to spend it. Now you tell me, does that make a lot of sense? So wait. And there are times where myself as an educator, I showed up in my class, I had this piece of equipment that I know that cost probably close to $100,000. I never used it day one. It just magically showed up there. So I think the allocation process and how we use it, and I think how we're allowed to spend money, one of the things we look at is kind of the either you use it or lose it type mentality. We have a budget, just keep it in the budget, but have the flexibility. I mean, for me as a business person, if I knew that I needed money somewhere else, I moved the money over there, okay? It was flexible. So you have to prioritize, but also, like I said, I think just looking at the business sense will help out, but more money is not the issue. Because you look at Washington, D.C., and they throw more and more at it, and what have we gotten, okay? And more does not make better. So, okay, so that's kind of where we're at. Yes, sir.
With the advent of IT, I know in my area, I can go online and learn a great deal. How would you deal with this issue in bringing more education out into the rural areas where some of the other facilities are now available?
Well, there again, I think looking at the purchasing consortium itself, because what you find out is that anything with technology costs, and you have to have a platform, and you have to think that not only are you looking just for 3 years down the road, but can it sustain what's coming 10 years down the road? So you have to have a sound business plan that looks at, okay, this is what we're going to commit to do.
Is it a part of your program?
With that, as far as that, a lot of that is local. With that, as far as their spending, but I think for myself, looking at coming together and bringing all these entities together and saying, what can the state do to help you get those resources? I think the purchasing consortium itself, we've had, my travels, we've had a lot of people are looking at getting tablets or iPads or whatever for students, maybe eliminating books, and just using that as a system with that. Well, that's going to cost money, and I think we have to look at what is the overall cost with that. I mean, because there is a reason why you have Microsoft 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, with the updates, and just make sure that we're very sound with that. But that would be an excellent way to expand our course offerings to our kids, because what you can find out is that you could bring a group of 30 kids in there, but if we're having the virtual technology, you may have 30 teachers dealing with them. So that's something we could definitely look at and hopefully help our rural systems and also even our larger systems out as well. Yes, sir.
You have a really tough road to hoe because your ideals that you've talked about are against what our current legislation has done and our current administration stands for. Are you ready for the fight?
Well, like I said, I'm an old coach. I'm an old administrator. And I've always dealt with what I call the perfect storm. That's parents or the student. I have to deal with children and money, okay, or taxes. So it's not something. I mean, there's no disillusion as far as what I'm up against. But what I'll say, on November 4th, the people of Georgia have a chance to speak. Okay, and so when you speak, then that means when I go up there, I will represent you. I mean, I look at this as a public service. I am not here for a re-election. If it's for and done, so be it. It's for and done. You know, if it means that I'm up here for the next 8 years, 12 years, or whatever, then so be it. The message will not change. I will not change. I do not take money from outside the state. I do not take PAC money, you know, which some people have been kind of critical with that. And I don't take, you know, special interest that deals specifically with education, because this office will not be bought and sold. And so that means that I come and I will make sure that what I represent is the views of Georgia. And I mean, we can agree to disagree. I think that's one of the things I look at, that even as an old coach, that, you know, when I dealt with it, we had a game, we fought the battle, and then we went on. We shook hands at the end of the day, and then we get ready. Now, doesn't mean we'll get everything we want. Probably not. I mean, I've never lived in a world that I got everything I wanted, but it doesn't mean that I'm not willing to fight for it. So that's my commitment to you. I just asked that on November 5th, that when I, you know, start to assume this office, that I'm not walking alone, but I'm having you with me, and because, you know, we have to work together, and that's what we'll take. Okay?
Thank you, Richard.